In the front pew of the dimly lit church I sat quietly with my hands folded neatly. My gaze was fixed on the elegant mahogany coffin that stood solemnly at the altar, housing my mother. Throughout my life I had consistently sought her approval, yet she made it painfully obvious that I was never enough. Tears welled at the edges of my vision, not from sorrow, but from the realization of the closure I knew deep down I would never attain. Beside me my sister Olivia sniffed theatrically, dabbing at her eyes with a lace-trimmed handkerchief. She inevitably managed to make every situation revolve around her, even in these solemn moments. Once the priest completed his final benediction, Olivia emitted a soft, pitiful sob, leaning on to her husband Connor, who encircled her with a comforting embrace. Ever the perfect picture, Olivia's designer black dress accentuated her figure impeccably, and her blonde curls cascaded in graceful waves. Even at a funeral, she effortlessly garnered the spotlight. I swallowed the lump in my throat and glanced at the second row, where my aunt and uncle sat rigidly, evading my gaze. As was the rest of the family, they all knew. I had braced myself for what was to come, convinced myself it didn't matter. Yet nothing could have truly prepared me for the lawyer's announcement following the service. "I'm sorry, Mandy, mister," Holloway stated, adjusting his glasses as he sifted through the documents of my mother's will. "Your parents left everything to Olivia." Cold, numbing sensation washed over me. "Everything?" I queried, my voice surprisingly calm. "Yes," he hesitated before continuing. "They believed you were sufficiently independent and didn't require financial support. Olivia, being a stay-at-home mom, needed the assistance more." My fingertips dug into the fabric of my dress. Olivia had 3 properties, a husband earning a 6-figure income, and luxury cars in her driveway. Yet I, who funded my own college education, juggled 2 jobs, and never once asked for parental assistance, was deemed unworthy. "That's absurd," Aunt Marley muttered under her breath, breaking the uncomfortable silence. But Olivia was unsurprised. She offered only a weary sigh, as though this was another unfortunate duty she must shoulder. "I mean, it does make sense," she murmured, placing a hand over mine as if offering consolation. "You've always been so independent, Mandy. Mom and Dad just wanted to help me, that's all. That's all." I withdrew my hand abruptly. "You knew, didn't you?" I asked, my voice barely audible. She bit her lip. They might have mentioned something before, and there lay the truth exposed. Part of me yearned to scream, to lash out, to question how even in death my parents found ways to emphasize my inadequacy. Yet, years of being the overlooked daughter had taught me that anger changed nothing. So, I smiled, because if they thought I was independent before, they had no conception of what I was capable of now. I turned to the lawyer. "Thank you for your time," I stated smoothly, rising and gathering my purse. "But I won't be contesting the will." Olivia's brow furrowed. "Wait, you're not mad?" I regarded her with a measured stare before tilting my head. "Oh, Liv," I murmured, stepping closer so only she could hear. "I don't need their money." Her shoulders visibly relaxed, mistaking my words for resignation. I turned on my heel and walked out of that office with my head held high. What Olivia didn't realize, what no one knew, was that I had already planned my own final tribute to our dear parents, and it would be unforgettable. I wasn't always invisible to my parents, at least, I don't think so. There must have been a point, perhaps when I was a child clinging to my mother's skirt or babbling nonsense to my father, when they saw me, truly saw me. But as I matured, the chasm between Olivia and me became undeniably apparent. She was the golden child, the cherished daughter who could do no wrong, and I was the afterthought. It all began with minor things. When Olivia won her first dance recital at the age of 6, my parents threw a grand celebration, complete with a cake shaped like ballet slippers. Conversely, when I secured first place in a spelling bee the same year, my mother simply patted my head and told me to keep up. Mandy always tried to convince herself that it didn't bother her, that she didn't need the admiration or affection. But the sting was undeniable when Olivia received a brand new car wrapped in a red bow on her 16th birthday, while Mandy got an old bike because, as her parents put it, she didn't really go out much anyway. Olivia glided through life, charming everyone and enjoying parental favoritism, while Mandy was left to approach every challenge head-on. Determined, Mandy worked tirelessly, juggling 2 part-time jobs to fund her way through college. She secured a stable career in finance, and meticulously saved and invested her earnings. She depended on no one. Despite all her efforts, in the end, it seemed futile. That night, in her small apartment, she repeatedly thought about the words that had crushed her. "Your parents left everything to Olivia." Naturally, disappointment was inevitable, yet why would she expect a different outcome? Her phone buzzed, snapping her back to reality. It was a message from Aunt Marlene. "Mandy, what your parents did is appalling. You deserve better than this." It was followed by another text. "You should contest the will. It's unjust." The notion of fairness made Mandy laugh bitterly because fairness had never been present in her relationship with her parents. She had accepted that long ago. However, Olivia pretending this situation was merely another unpleasant inconvenience was unacceptable. Determined, Mandy opened her laptop, intending to contact a lawyer. A week later, she found herself standing before her parents' former house, now Olivia's domain. The familiar scents were unchanged, but the place hadn't felt like home in a long time. Olivia greeted her with surprise, clearly not anticipating Mandy's visit. "I need to pick up some belongings," Mandy stated flatly. "Mom had personal letters and keepsakes I'd like to have." Although hesitant, Olivia allowed her entry. Mandy wandered the house slowly, memories weighing heavily with each step. The living room where her parents lavishly praised Olivia. The dining table where their discussions centered on Olivia's accomplishments. But Mandy was there for a specific reason. Her father's old study. Inside the desk drawer, among various papers and letters, she found the original will. Like the version the lawyer had read, this one included a clause dictating the estate should be evenly divided between her and Olivia. The truth unveiled, Mandy's grip tightened on the paper. Olivia had done more than just embrace her preferential treatment. She had altered the will. Andy turned, her heart pounding. Olivia watched her from the doorway, arms crossed. "You weren't supposed to see that," Olivia remarked, her tone bored and calm. Without offering justification or confession, Olivia simply shrugged, asserting, "Mom and Dad always meant for me to have everything, Mandy. I only ensured their desires were fulfilled." Andy's anger burned, but outwardly she remained composed. She could have argued, exposed Olivia's actions, but she simply smiled. "Thank you for your honesty," she said calmly. "That's all I needed to know." With those words, Mandy left the house, already strategizing her next steps because Olivia had committed a major error in underestimating her. Olivia considered Mandy the same overlooked girl, but would soon discover just how mistaken she was. Buried within her father's desk was the truth Mandy had sought, and now it was uncovered for her to act upon. Her parents intended an equitable inheritance between Olivia and her, but Olivia ensured otherwise, guaranteeing Mandy would be left with nothing. Olivia assumed Mandy would resign to the injustice, but this time Mandy was prepared to show just how resilient and determined she could be. Olivia was meticulous, and I had a clear view of that by now. I considered hiring a lawyer to contend with the will legally, but court cases can be sluggish and complicated. It demanded an alternative tactic, something to strike where it mattered most. What I needed was someone to assist me, and I found him in a dimly lit bar, the walls soaked in the scent of old whiskey. "Hello, Connor," I greeted as I slid into the seat opposite Olivia's husband. Connor, startled, laid his drink aside. "Mandy," he said with a frown, "what are you doing here?" I intertwined my fingers on the table. "I'm aware of the will." His body went rigid at my words. "What?" Leaning in, I spoke softly. "Olivia altered it. I discovered it in Dad's study. My parents intended for me to have half, but Olivia ensured otherwise." Connor sighed, rubbing his face, not astonished. "You were where?" I indicated, not as a question. "I suspected," he confessed, eyes glued to his glass. "Olivia ruled everything. The assets, the accounts, the house." He had stopped questioning long ago. Of course, he had Olivia dominated their marriage, while Connor simply accompanied. But I didn't come to criticize him. I intended to use him. "Listen," I softened my tone, "I'm indifferent to the money." Connor scoffed. "Olivia thinks you are," he retorted. "Olivia presumes too much," I countered. "I aim wasn't her wealth. I wanted recompense for her deeds." Connor scrutinized me, then chuckled unexpectedly. "I'd love to witness that." He shook his head. "But Olivia, she always wins, Mandy. She's unstoppable." "Not this time," I assured, holding knowledge Olivia lacked, ready to wield it. Over weeks, I infiltrated Olivia's life, ignoring financials, yearning for something deeper, intimate. My breakthrough came late, perusing old social media images. A trip to Italy 3 years prior with friends Connor wasn't among. I clicked tags. One arose: David Carlyle, companion, not mere acquaintanceship. Browsing his account illuminated a trail: flirtations, cryptic jokes, stretching years Olivia's infidelity carelessly exposed. My heart raced. An immaculate setup emerged, not a grand spectacle but a delicate exposure. I dispatched Connor screenshots, no preamble, just evidence. His reply was swift. Where did these originate? I retort, does it matter? You deserve veracity. A pause, then. We must converse. I smiled, checkmate, Olivia. The following night at a quaint cafe, Connor awaited me, enveloped in a trance over his coffee. Our eyes met, and I acknowledged he had viewed it all. Seated opposite him, silence pervaded, a mix of anger, disbelief, even relief perforated the air. Eventually he inquired, voice husky, how long? At least 4 years, I confessed. Connor's laugh was hollow, bitter. Of course, he muttered, attempting a shaky sip of coffee. I regret your discovery method, I expressed sincerely. No, you don't, he challenged. You wanted this revelation. I did, I admitted. But because Olivia warranted exposure. She deceived everyone, us my parents, until their demise. He drew a hand through his hair dejectedly. What next? What is your demand? Mindy leaned forward, expressing her intentions with a calm determination. I don't want your money or your sympathy, she declared. I just want to watch your world fall apart. Connor took his time, scrutinizing her before a sly, dark smile appeared on his lips. You're not alone, he finally said. For nearly an hour, they sat discussing every detail of Olivia's deceit, her lies, the fake will, everything. Connor was angry, but his anger was cold and calculated, the kind that leads to inevitable devastation. I want a divorce, he articulated steadily, and full custody of the kids. This was a calculated and bold move, especially given Olivia's carefully crafted image as a loving wife and devoted mother, an image Connor planned to dismantle. The following day, from a safe distance, Mandy observed as Connor's lawyer delivered the divorce papers to Olivia's door. Olivia, in a silk robe, hair perfectly styled, cup of coffee in hand, opened the door. Her expression quickly twisted with ugliness upon seeing the envelope. Andy wished to hear Olivia's shocked gasp, her panic, yet she merely watched Olivia's fingers clench the papers. Olivia glanced around, not at Connor or her kids, but at her neighbors, concerned more with their perception than her crumbling marriage, a typical Olivia move. Though it seemed time to step back and allow Connor to proceed, Mandy wasn't done yet. Olivia still believed she could manipulate her way out of the situation. Andy took action, ensuring that control slipped from Olivia's grasp. With a few clicks, she sent evidence of Olivia's affair not to Connor but to every corner of Olivia's social network. Her mommy group chats, the charity board, even the homeowners association, everyone of significance to her. The fallout was swift. Olivia's phone exploded with incoming calls and texts. At first, she sought to deny and reinterpret the evidence, but it was overwhelming. By morning, she stood ostracized, the social circle she carefully built rejecting her. For the first time, Olivia was utterly alone. People like Olivia believe consequences don't affect them, that their reality, bending lies and manipulations, will always suffice. But not this time. Andy made sure of it. A week after releasing the affair evidence, Olivia was unraveling. Her once devoted friends were avoiding her. School mothers whispered during drop-offs, and the charity board requested her resignation. Worse, Connor had moved out, taking the children along. She lost everything. But Olivia wasn't one to go down quietly. She had one more gambit. At work, Mandy received Olivia's call, debated ignoring it, but curiosity prevailed. You ruined my life, Olivia's voice, raw and nearly unrecognizable, accused. No, Olivia, Mandy calmly corrected. You did that to yourself. Olivia's laugh was sharp, bitter. You think you're clever, that you've won. I don't need to win, Mandy replied. I just needed the truth to surface. Olivia paused, then her tone turned icy. You think you've stripped everything away? Fine. But watch your back. I have nothing left to lose. She hung up. Perhaps any ordinary person might have been scared, yet Mandy knew Olivia well. Her threats were hollow bluffs. Still, caution was advisable. Olivia had lost reputation, marriage, image, but not yet the house. Andy's goal wasn't monetary. She intended to conclude what she started. Reaching out to Connor, Mandy asked knowingly, "Do you still have the original will?" "Yes," he confirmed, puzzled. Andy smiled. It's time to undo Olivia's deceit. It required a few weeks, but in the end, her attorney filed the necessary legal case to address Olivia's fraudulent alterations. The court's decision was swift, ruling in my favor due to overwhelming evidence and Connor's compelling testimony. My parents' original intentions were restored, and I now legally own half of everything, including the house. The look on Olivia's face when the sheriff arrived with the eviction notices etched in my memory. "This is my house!" she yelled, her voice high-pitched with anger. I stood firm at the entrance, saying, "Not anymore. You took everything from me, Olivia, and now I'm merely reclaiming what's rightfully mine." Her hands trembled as they formed tight fists, eyes filled with despair as she whispered, "Where am I supposed to go?" I smirked slightly. "You'll have to start being independent, I guess." With a bittersweet smile, I handed her a final parting gift, a worn bicycle, the same one my parents had given me on my 16th birthday. As I closed the door behind me, a sense of freedom washed over me. It was the first time Olivia had nobody to turn to, and I was finally unfettered. The house was calm, devoid of the judgmental gazes and whispered conversations about how unlike Olivia I was. It was truly mine, legally and figuratively. Yet, standing in the opulent living room filled with lavish furnishings, it felt hollow. This place had been a battlefield, not a home, symbolizing everything I had been denied. Resolute, I listed the house for sale the following day, not for profit or revenge, just for a fresh start. It had been Olivia's dominion and my parents' tribute to their ideal daughter, and I wanted no part of it. Watching the for sale sign being planted, I felt a sense of liberation, not loss. Olivia, on the other hand, wasn't faring as well. Mutual acquaintances mentioned Connor had gained full custody and she was struggling in his absence. Renting a small apartment on the outskirts of town and working a menial job she despised, she now lived the type of life she once scorned. Ironically, I didn't feel victorious nor guilty, just done. I donated most of my inheritance, not out of spite, but because I'd built my life without it, needing nothing of the wealth to define me. I kept enough to start anew in a different city, where I could just be Mandy, no longer the forgotten daughter. A week before I departed, Aunt Marlene, the sole family member who had unwaveringly supported me, invited me for dinner. As we sat, she clasped my hand and remarked softly, "Your parents misjudged you. They believed you didn't need them, that you were too strong and independent. But really, they needed you." I looked at her, puzzled, and she explained, "They centered everything around Olivia because she needed support, validation, and approval. But you, Mandy, you thrived despite them, and that intimidated them." Her words resonated deeply. Perhaps she was right. Maybe my parents didn't neglect me because I wasn't good enough, but because I didn't require them the way Olivia did. For the first time, that realization didn't sting. At evening, as I packed my remaining belongings, I glanced around my old room. The girl who once occupied it, striving for approval, was gone. In her place stood a woman with nothing left to prove. I gathered my bags, walked out, and never looked back because my past didn't define me, my future did.